Hello. So my name is Mike Silagadze. I'm the founder and CEO of ether.fi. I'm going to talk to you today about some lessons that could be taken from the Web 2 world, which is where most of my background is from, actually, and apply it to Web 3 to build successful apps, specifically consumer apps. Before I get into it, let's do a quick show of hands. How many people have heard of ether.fi? Okay, all right, looks like about 20%. That's not bad. How many of you have actually used it in your crypto adventures? Okay, all right, so a handful of people. Well, that's great. So I'll spend a little bit of time towards the end of the talk telling you a bit more about ether.fi. But at a high level, what ether.fi does is, our mission is to make DeFi easy and accessible to normal people. Our mission through a suite of 3 integrated products, ether.fi Stake, ether.fi Liquid, and ether.fi Cash, is to make it so that users don't have to deal with all the typical complexities that they normally would deal with in dealing with DeFi. Okay, so I'll start with a bit of a background as far as like where I come from in the Web 2 world. I started pretty much out of university a company called Top Hat, which was an education technology business. If you know anything about the education technology space, in our case, we sold software to universities to make learning more engaging for higher education. If you know anything about that space, you know that's basically where startups go to die. It's one of the most brutally difficult spaces that you can get into for all the reasons that you could probably imagine: super slow, misaligned incentives, et cetera. So it's an incredibly challenging space to build, any kind of products, let alone, products that are aimed at the end user. Thankfully, Top Hat ended up being pretty successful, but it took a long time. I spent about 10 years from start to when we exited the business, building it, really against the grain of, what was possible in higher ed. By the end of it, the business was great. We had about 60 million in annual revenues. We were growing about 40% a year, break even. So it was a fantastic business, over 400 employees. And then in 2021, we ended up selling the business, and it was a great outcome. Now, one of the reasons that I think Top Hat was successful is it was in this type of category that's known as vertical SaaS. Some of you hopefully know what that is. Actually, show of hands, how many people know the category vertical SaaS and know what I'm talking about when I say that? Almost nobody. Okay, well, good. So I'll do a bit of a tutorial about what that is and why that's interesting, and I think super relevant to the DeFi space. So Top Hat was a vertical SaaS business, which basically means it was a business aimed at a particular industry segment. So in our case, it was higher education, and it focused on building a suite of products like layers on a cake, targeted at that one segment of users. And vertical SaaS businesses became incredibly popular around the 2010s or so, and it started becoming a bit of a model and a template kind of developed for how to build these businesses and why they were really interesting and super effective. They tended to be really capital efficient. They tended to grow really fast, and were just these wildly profitable types of companies. In fact, if you look at vertical SaaS companies on the NASDAQ or S&P 500 list, that index of companies would have outperformed pretty much anything over the last little while. I haven't checked lately, but I think that's probably still true. So these are these really awesome businesses. Okay, so what makes them awesome? Well, vertical SaaS businesses or vertically integrated businesses tend to have a really powerful positive feedback loop. Because when you offer multiple products to the same set of customers, among other things, what tends to happen is you tend to have very low cost of acquisition. You tend to have very low CAC for your users. Because with every product that you launch, you can cross-sell and upsell that same product to the same user base, which is substantially cheaper than acquiring a brand new customer in some other industry. So your sales and marketing costs tend to be a lot lower as a result of that. Now, another benefit of it is now you've got users that are using multiple products rather than just one product. And so your ARPU, your average revenue per user, is also higher. So you can afford to provide a better level of support. You can charge more because not only is there more products that you can sell to the user, but there's a value that you can benefit from in terms of the integration of the products themselves, because it just creates a better experience for users. That in turn leads to lower churn, which, if you, hopefully in your mind you're thinking about these things as applied to DeFi projects or the crypto space. You tend to have lower churn because if users are using multiple products in your suite of offerings instead of just one, what that leads to is they're very likely to stick around. Even if one product doesn't fully meet expectations, what tends to happen is, they're using a whole bunch of them, and so they kind of stay in your ecosystem and universe. And then, of course, you get better network effects because all of your energy is directed at like a single industry, a single base of customers and users, rather than being spread across a whole bunch of different categories. So these businesses tend to be really awesome. Again, super profitable, very capital efficient, long-lasting. You tend to, in fact, have negative gross dollar churn. Again, if you're, in the SaaS world, churn is a huge challenge, just like it is in DeFi, because you have to, if you lose 10% of your customers every year, you have to throw sales and marketing dollars at it to just get back to even, and then hopefully more in order to continue growing. So anyway, so these are great businesses. They're really awesome. Now, none of that exists in DeFi. We see a bunch of this in CeFi, like centralized exchanges in particular are great at this, right? They have dozens of products in most cases, for the retail user, for institutional, and everything in between. And they do this really well. But in DeFi, what we see instead is thousands and thousands of these point solutions. DEXs, perp exchanges, yield aggregators, farms, whatever, all these different things. And, of course, 15 different versions of each one of them that basically do the same thing. And what it requires the user to do is to then basically almost wire up their own financial derivatives in order to participate in DeFi, which is kind of absurd, really. And if you think about what percentage of users in the broader population would be capable or interested in doing this kind of stuff, it's quite small. And so it's no surprise that in DeFi, and this is the sort of dirty little secret that anybody that operates a protocol knows, is there's maybe a few 100,000 users, like real users. I'm not talking about active wallets or any other nonsense metrics, but there's maybe a few 100,000 actual DeFi users out there. And out of those few 100,000 users, there's maybe 5,000 that actually have basically all of the assets. I certainly didn't get into the crypto space to serve 5,000 super rich dudes. So this is a problem that I think needs to be solved. I think it's important to talk a little bit about why this is. Why is it that DeFi is filled with thousands of these point solutions that aren't super integrated and don't create a particularly good user experience? I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that DeFi is still relatively early stage. If you think about the clock started in 2020, understanding that maybe it was a little bit before that, that's not super long, right? The space hasn't had enough time to mature and develop a lot of the tooling to make it more user-friendly for customers. So that's one part of it. If you look at where DeFi is relative to, let's say, other industries, I might look at the early days of personal computing, right? In, let's say, the 1990s, when, if you really wanted to have a computer, you pretty much had to build it yourself. You'd have to buy a case, a motherboard, a CPU, you'd have to buy a video card, wire it together. You'd install your operating system from floppy disks. I'm definitely aging myself here. Hopefully some of you did this too. It was an experience that was really only meant for power users. Normal people would never do this kind of stuff. And it was only when a lot of that stuff got abstracted and simplified, that computers started to become more of a mass market thing, and everybody got one in their pocket and on their desk, and so on. So I think part of it is just the fact that the space is early. Another challenge, and again, I feel like I have to talk about this, is that a lot of the crypto funding environment is pretty toxic, right? There's predatory behavior among crypto investors that in the SaaS world, and really any other part of the world, would get you blacklisted basically instantly. But we as a crypto community kind of tend to look at it and say, well, that's just normal behavior. So I think that's something that also has to change, because it leads to very short-sighted behavior. It leads to your product, for many crypto companies, their product is really their token that they're trying to launch. The narrative around it ends up being almost like a secondary afterthought. So that kind of stuff really needs to stop being tolerated if we were to move the space forward and actually make it something that's that's more broadly applicable. Okay, so what ether.fi is doing, I mean, our whole trick, and the reason we've had some success over the last couple of years, is we are basically applying that same vertical SaaS playbook, in this case, vertical integration in the crypto space, to DeFi. We are creating a suite of integrated products that make DeFi easy and accessible to normal people. So specifically in our case, that means ether.fi Stake, ether.fi Liquid, and ether.fi Cash, that together, put bubble wrap around DeFi and abstract a lot of the complexity. And we plan to do a lot more of it to make it even easier, so that we can actually onboard the next 100 million, the next billion people into crypto. What we're trying to do overall is to create this MVP of a financial services solution that's crypto native for users, that allows people to solve the three basic problems that they have in their financial lives. They want to be able to save their money, they want to be able to deploy their capital to invest it, and they want to be able to spend their money. So we need to create a suite of these integrated products that make it easy for them to do that. And as I said, in our case, that's Stake, Liquid, and Cash. So ether.fi Stake is our liquid staking and restaking product. Analogously could be thought of as a savings account. It's been around for a little over a year now. It's grown to about I think almost 6 billion in assets. So it's one of the largest products in DeFi now. It's been incredibly successful. And our next product was ether.fi Liquid, which we launched on the back of ether.fi Stake, and that's a DeFi strategy product. So it is basically an answer to the question, great, you've staked your ETH, now what do you do with it? And so it automates and simplifies the process of deploying your staked assets into DeFi, so that you don't have to wire up your own financial derivatives. You can automate that and have that simplified. So now this product is over $1 billion in TVL. It's by far the largest in the yield aggregator category, as it's called. And it is a great example where we had this thesis that we could apply vertical integration in the DeFi space, and we'd be able to launch another product and get our existing user base to adopt it, and it worked out super well. And our last product is ether.fi Cash, which is a non-custodial wallet with cross-chain built right into it, account abstraction, social recovery, and all these great features that make it super easy and simple to use. And attached to it is a credit card. So it allows you to take your assets, either spend your stables in the real world using a Visa credit card, or to borrow against your DeFi positions again and use those assets in real life. It's something that we're super excited about. We are just in the process of rolling that out to the first few hundred beta users, but I'm optimistically, I expect this to be the largest crypto payments product within a few months, as we saw with our other offerings. So we're pretty excited. I think hopefully this becomes a bit of a model that allows the space to mature and create an environment where normal people can easily plug into DeFi and just live their lives on chain, such that they never have to off-ramp again. Thank you.